Let's get a little bit deeper into the classification of life. This keeps evolving because, as we said, because of new genetic information and people realizing the definition of species is not very robust in many ways and so on, but you need working definitions of life to start with, right? So living things obviously capture, store and move energy, right? We eat food because that's life that is giving us energy. So it captured and stored energy and we are eating it, not just photosynthetic vegetables and grains and so on, but also animal life, which is taking other forms of energy and producing meat for us, which is energy for us. And life reproduces. Life adapts to the environment and it has this Darwinian evolution, so it changes over time. It's not like Homo sapiens are not evolving anymore. Actually, if you read about it, you'll find that there are features that are systematically changing among humans over time because we evolved, let's say, a couple of million years ago, and then Homo sapiens, the modern human being, agricultural life only started 12,000 years ago, but we had our relatives Neanderthals disappear only about 25,000 years ago. So sapiens and Neanderthals coexisted, co-bred. Most sapiens now carry about 25% Neanderthal genes and so on and so forth. So what is the broad characterization, classification of life? So here is the tree of life. You have three big branches. You have bacteria. Everybody knows what that is. Archaea is similar to bacteria but a more simple microscopic creature, and I will mention that in the context of geologic time in a minute. And Eukarya, which is complex multicellular organisms, and this is a broad tree which includes plants and animals and us. Okay, and its DNA is got a discrete nucleus. So when life evolved, the cell was simple, so the DNA and RNA would have been floating around in this fluid inside without a nucleus. They are called prokaryotes. Over time, eukaryotes evolved, which have a nucleus, which is binding the, which is holding the DNA, and then photosynthesizers have things like chloroplasts outside the cell. Chloroplasts were assimilated by another bacteria, thinking, oh, if I have this, I can produce my own energy. Mitochondrion carries its own genomic signature because that's what produces the energy by respiration. So if you have chloroplasts and mitochondrion, you can produce energy, burn energy, grow, move around, and so on. Okay, so that's kind of a very brief introduction to life. But prokaryotes are cells with no nucleus, and eukaryotes are cells with nucleus. Eukarya so includes everything. Archaea, remember when we said, when we looked at the geological eras in the first chapter, we said we had Hadean, where Earth was like hell. Hades comes from hell. It was being bombarded by the meteorites, and crusts were still moving around, lots of volcanic activity. It was like a primordial soup. And then Archaea is the beginning where the first evidence of life emerges around 3.85 billion years ago. So Archaea is kind of that first form of life, and then bacteria come along, and then there is a relation to the evolution of oxygen, which we briefly talked about, to the evolution of eukarya, multicellular life, more complex life, more oxygen, and so on. And at the point where these three branches meet, bacteria, archaea, and eukarya meet, you have common ancestral community, and many of them tend to be what are called hyperthermophiles, which means they live in very hot conditions. So this can be used to infer that maybe life evolved in very hot conditions. remember, they were not photosynthesizers, they were chemosynthesizers. So you can imagine maybe some kind of a membrane evolved which allowed organic matter to go or inorganic matter to go through and create organic matter, some form of life. We haven't defined life yet, right? But this most likely happened in very hot temperatures. Okay, so just to go back to the NASA's astrobiology program, we don't know if life originated on Earth or it originated somewhere else and got thrown onto Earth, or it originated in many places. So it's called panspermia and so on and so forth. So if you find evidence of life elsewhere, you will try to bring back the life form or its DNA in some ways and see if it fits on this tree of life that we have on Earth. That may give us a clue as to whether it evolved independently or it's a separate form of life that doesn't exist on Earth, and so on and so forth. Okay, so many interesting questions that you can read about. The book called *Sapiens* is very popular by what's his name, Harari, and he has written another couple of books following that, but there are many popular books on evolution and biology that you can read up. So this is the classification of life. Now we will come to more details in the next podcast, but biology is really fascinating, and we'll go back to marine biology soon. Right? So let me close out this one. It's already 6 minutes long. No problem. Just remember the major points.